So I don't know where in the world you might be watching this video from. I myself live in Canada, more specifically in the Toronto area, and we are experiencing what I consider to be some of the worst weather that we get all year long. We're almost halfway through December, and it is cold and gloomy and windy and rainy. The sun barely comes up, if at all, and honestly, this weather leaves me feeling really bummed out and really lethargic, and it makes me just not want to leave the house at all. And when I don't leave the house, I get bored and even more bummed out and even more lethargic, and it just becomes this vicious cycle. So what I have come up with over the last couple years and over the last couple winters are some hobbies and some activities that I can partake in inside to help pass the time and stop me from being so mopey and bummed out and bored all the time. And I'm going to share them with you in this video. All of the activities and all of the hobbies I'm going to discuss are going to be things that are either completely free or very, very inexpensive to get into, and most importantly, they're going to be completely minimalist friendly, meaning that they're not going to require you to get a whole bunch of equipment or gear or output a whole bunch of money to get things just to be able to partake in said activity. So with all of that said, let me show you how I've been keeping busy. Alrighty, so hobby number one is going to be something that's a little bit stereotypical, or very stereotypical honestly, for the whole minimalist movement, but it is plants. Actually, let me give you a quick plant tour before I explain any more. Starting right here, actually. This is my monstera. It's quite large. It sits very uncomfortably in the middle of my living space because I don't know what to do with it because it's too big. That might look very impressive, but it was actually this big when I got it. I don't really know what I'm doing. Let me show you what's up next. Here I have, I think this is called a bromeliad. I could be saying that wrong. It is part of the pineapple family. You can see that it kind of just looks like a pineapple but doesn't do anything, and it's got this red flower up top. Moving over to the kitchen, this is the first plant I ever got. It's actually an aloe vera, and it is thriving. Honestly, it must love the neglect because I neglect it terribly. I forget to water it for weeks or even longer at a time. And I guess because it's a cactus or a succulent or whatever, it enjoys being neglected, so we get along great. This right here I will talk a little bit more about in a minute. It is a cutting from a snake plant, but we'll discuss that in a second. And finally, my favorite is right over here. This, believe it or not, is a dwarf lime tree. In fact, you can see right here, I have some little baby limes blooming already. I got this early in the spring from Lowe's. It was about a quarter of this size and it's been doing phenomenal. And maybe by the time summer rolls around, I'll have some actual limes that I can use, which would be really cool. Oh, just made another leaf fall off. I should probably stop touching it. But indoor plant keeping or indoor gardening, whatever you want to call it, is something that is fairly new to me. It's not something I grew up doing. I always enjoyed helping my mom do outdoor gardening in the spring and in the summer when I was growing up. But we had 2 cats at home, and I say this with all of the love in my heart. They were morons, and no matter what kind of plant you brought in the house, they would climb up to it, they would chew on it, they would swallow it, and then they would puke all over the house. So indoor plants were out of the equation. Now that I have my own space and I just have Levi and he doesn't touch anything, I can get into the indoor plant space, and I find it really, really enjoyable to take care of them. I find it very therapeutic to go around the house maybe once a week to water them, check up on them, see how things are going, pull off any dead leaves, etc., etc. Now, when I first got into plant keeping, I was kind of shocked to realize how expensive they can be. Some of them I did buy new. Like I said, the lime tree came from Lowe's, and actually my monstera came from Walmart, believe it or not. But that little snake plant cutting I have in the kitchen I got for free. And this is a little hack that I have learned recently. In my town, there's actually a Facebook group called Plant Exchange, and there might be one in your town as well. But it is a group where people propagate and cut off pieces of their plants and give them away for free, or trade them, or if they have a plant that they don't want anymore that's taking up too much space, or maybe it's not doing very well, they'll give that away for free, and you can just go pick them up and trade them or rescue them or do whatever you want. And you can actually get a significant number of plants and all sorts of different varieties for free, or just by trading a piece of whatever you have. It's something I would recommend if you don't have cats, that is. But with all of that said, let's get into the second hobby. The second activity that I've really gotten into over the last couple years, particularly in the wintertime, is reading. And I will be the first to admit I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this, but when I was a kid, I didn't think that I liked reading. In fact, when I was given a book to read at school, I would never ever read it. I would go onto sparknotes.com and look at the cheat sheet. And honestly, sometimes I would barely even read that. I couldn't bring myself to care, and so I assumed, okay, well, I'm just not a reader. Turns out that that's not true at all. Now that I can read at a leisurely pace, and more specifically, I can read the books that I'm interested in, the books that I want to read, I've come to really, really enjoy reading. I've figured out what kind of books I like, and I can go through them at a surprisingly quick pace, especially in the wintertime when I have really nothing better to do. But when I went to the bookstore and picked up a couple books, I was actually shocked to learn how expensive they were. And again, maybe that's ignorance on my part for not being a long-time reader, but $20 or $30 for a single book that I can easily go through in a day or two if I'm enjoying it is not sustainable for me. It's a lot of money. So I bought the first 2 books, I read through them, and I was like, all right, well, now what do I do? Well, guess what? Facebook comes to the rescue again, because once again, in my town, and most likely in your town as well, there's Facebook exchange groups for books. So there are groups where people do exactly what I've done. They buy a new release, they read through it very quickly, they no longer want it, and they trade it away, or sometimes even just give it away for free. And so I was able to take the first 2 books that I bought and trade them for 2 new ones, and then trade those for 2 new ones, and then get some more just for free. And before you know it, I have a huge pile of books now that are new releases in excellent, almost new condition that I can read through at my own pace, and I can keep them, I can give them away, I can trade them away. I never have to spend any more money on books. If there's one thing that I can't stress enough in this video, it is Facebook groups. They're a life changer, honestly. They exist for plants, for books, for puzzles, whatever it is that you have that you want to get more of or trade for something new. I can almost guarantee that in your town or in your city, there's a Facebook group where people are trading and giving away whatever it is you would otherwise spend good money on. And speaking of things I'd like to give away, no, I'm totally kidding. Oh my god, he's the love of my life. I shouldn't even joke about that. But on a serious note, activity number 3 is hanging out with a pet and taking care of them. This guy is my absolute best friend. We do everything together. We play, we exercise, we do all of these things that would be so much less fun without him. And you might be thinking, well, that's great. I don't have a pet. But you can actually foster, and this is something that I don't think enough people realize. When you foster a dog or a cat through a rescue group or through a shelter, they cover all the expenses. All you have to do is hang out with them and take care of them. So they give you the food. If you get a cat, they give you the litter. They give you toys. They give you leashes and collars. They pay for the vet bills if there's any vet bills. They pay for the trainer if you need a trainer. They pay for all of these things. And all you have to do is just hang out with the dog or hang out with the cat and be their friend and take care of them until they find their forever home. For anybody who has toyed with the idea of getting an animal and just can't fully commit financially, or even just for a long period of time, you're not sure where your life is going to take you, fostering is the perfect answer. And so if you have a little bit of extra time on your hands, a little bit of extra love to give, consider fostering a dog or a cat or even a bunny or a guinea pig or a turtle or whatever kind of animal you feel like you could give a little bit of attention, a little bit of love to, and maybe you can make their life a little bit better, and they will definitely make your life a lot better. Okay, so let's say you can't foster a pet for whatever reason, and maybe you don't particularly enjoy reading. And let's say you have a cat who is gonna eat your houseplants and then vomit and vomit and vomit, and you're gonna walk in from work one day and there's gonna be 3 feet of vomit on the floor, and you're gonna have to pull on your rain boots to trudge through all the cat vomit. Am I projecting here a little bit? Okay, but what else can you do to keep busy is the question. But if none of the things we've discussed so far are of interest to you, something else that I think is a great way to chase the winter blues away is to learn a new instrument. You might be thinking, but Nicole, learning an instrument isn't free, it certainly isn't cheap, and I completely disagree. Let me tell you how. So, any hobby that you get into, this will apply whether we're talking photography, whether we're talking musical instruments, whether we're talking video games, you can get really deep into it, and pretty much any hobby can become an expensive hobby. But I don't think that there's any hobby that has to be an expensive hobby. So yeah, if you go to the store, let's say you want to learn guitar. If you go and you buy a brand new guitar and a brand new amp and all the things to go with it, you're gonna be down a lot of money. However, almost every single person that I know has a guitar sitting somewhere in their basement, or knows somebody who has a guitar sitting somewhere in their basement that is just collecting dust and not being used. And I would almost guarantee it that if you ask around in your friends and family, somebody has a guitar or a keyboard or an old set of drums or something that they would be happy to give to you. But if your friends and family are super lame and they really don't have anything to offer you, chances are you can pick up a used guitar or an entry-level set of drums or whatever else you may be interested in for $50 or less on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. And I know for a fact that this is the case because I do it all the time, because I flip them, and I have bought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of guitars over the years for $50 or less, and hundreds of sets of drums for well under $100. And the best part of all is if you don't stick with it, if you decide you're not into it, you can always resell it, probably at a profit, or at the very least get your money back. So you're basically renting an instrument for free. And even lessons nowadays are completely obsolete thanks to the internet. You can watch YouTube videos, you can download apps, all these different ways that will teach you how to learn an instrument at your own pace in a way that interests you. And it's so fulfilling, and it's so good for your brain, and it's so enriching to your life. And so I would highly, highly recommend picking up an instrument. If you already play an instrument, pick up a second one. Why not? Another interest that I have floated in and out of over the last number of years that I tend to really ramp up in the wintertime are what I call kitchen projects. So kitchen projects can be simple things like cooking or baking, but they can also be more interesting things like brewing kombucha, or roasting your own coffee beans, or making your own beer, or making your own wine, or making sourdough bread, making sauerkraut, fermenting things, making hot sauces. There's so many cool things you can do, and again, generally speaking, the barrier to entry is very, very low, if at all. For example, I used to be big into brewing kombucha. I've kind of teetered off of it for the time being, but you can get a SCOBY, which is like the starter that you need to make kombucha. You can get it for free on the internet because they just multiply like crazy and people give them away. Again, check Facebook Marketplace. I would guarantee you wherever you live, somebody's giving away a free kombucha SCOBY. If you want to make sourdough, it's free to make the starter. You just need flour and water, and even to make the whole loaf of bread, all you need is flour, water, and salt. It doesn't get a lot easier than that. Baking cookies is a pretty straightforward one, but the best thing of all is that it is so satisfying to make something with your hands and then see the finished product and know that you made that. You brewed that kombucha, you baked that bread, you made those cookies, and you can enjoy them for yourself, or you can even gift them to your friends and your family and your neighbors. And the final hobby that I want to discuss is something that I got into last winter that I've been doing all year long ever since and been gradually improving at and getting better at and really enjoying is making YouTube videos. And once again, I know that this is a hobby that people get really into and they spend a lot of money on gear and a lot of money on cameras and all sorts of things like that. And the truth is that if you have one of these, you don't need to spend a single dollar. Cell phones nowadays, the cameras in them are so good that you don't need a separate camera. You really don't. Making YouTube videos is a wonderful learning experience. It helps you to boost your confidence, learn to present and communicate and talk to a camera. It helps you to learn things like videography, cinematography, video editing. It gives you an outlet to reach out to people all over the world and find a community of people who are interested in things that you're interested in, even if you don't have friends in real life who are. For example, I don't really have many friends in real life who are into minimalism. Like, a lot of my friends just don't get it, and that's totally cool because through this YouTube channel, I've been able to connect with hundreds of people all over the world who have the same interests that I have and have discussions with them about things that I otherwise would have to keep all to myself. And really, there is no barrier to entry. If you have an internet connection and you have a cell phone, you can make YouTube videos. So if you have a hobby or an interest or something that you're really into and you just don't feel like you have somebody in your life you can share it with, make YouTube videos. You will find people and it'll be one of the best things you ever do. So with that in mind, if you found any value in this video, if you liked it at all, please go ahead and hit that like button. See, if you make a YouTube channel, you're gonna have to learn how to do this thing. It's called the call to action, and it's basically where you remind people to like and subscribe to your channel. So, oh yeah, subscribe as well if you haven't done that yet. And with that said, if there's any activities or hobbies that you like to partake in over the winter months, particularly if you live somewhere where it tends to be gloomy and cold and windy and nasty outside, anything that I didn't mention in the video, please leave me a comment down below and let me know, because the truth is, even with all of these activities that I partake in, I still get bored, I still get lonely, I still get mopey. It's not enough to pass the time, and so I'm really interested in picking up some new activities and new hobbies and things over and above what I mentioned in this video. If I missed anything, drop me a comment, let me know what it is, like the video, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you next week.